Hello, and welcome to the Gravel Ride Podcast, where we go deep on the sport of gravel cycling through in-depth interviews with product designers, event organizers, and athletes who are pioneering the sport. I'm your host, Craig Dalton, a lifelong cyclist who discovered gravel cycling back in 2016 and made all the mistakes you don't need to make. I approach each episode as a beginner to unlock all the knowledge you need to become a great gravel cyclist. This week on the show, we welcome Rich Snodsmith from Trek Travel. Rich is one of my oldest cycling friends. We met over 30 years ago, actually in Italy, as you'll hear from our story. Rich and I were recently in Siena in Italy for the Strada Bianchi Gran Fondo trip with Trek Travel. We were able to watch both the professional bike race as well as participate in a 140-kilometer mass start Gran Fondo across the white roads, the white gravel roads of Siena. Fantastic trip. I can't wait for you to hear more of the details. With that said, let's jump right into the show. Hey, Rich, welcome to the show.
Hey, Craig. Good to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. You and I just shared a magical experience on the roads and trails of Italy, which is the purpose of you joining this call. But you and I have a rich history, no pun intended, of cycling experiences in Italy.
That's right. We met randomly in 1996 at the Lugano Cycling World Championships and have stayed friends ever since.
Yeah. Fortunately, I eventually moved to San Francisco a few years later, so we were able to ride
Neighbors
together.
as well, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we were able to ride together for, gosh, it's hard to believe it's 3 decades at this point, which is crazy to think about. My end of our Lugano story was I was working in Italy, and my colleague, who we both know, Jeff Sanchez, said to me, going to go to the World Championships, and oh, by the way, we have to go pick up Rich. He's going to be at the Duomo in Milan on the way.
Pre-cell phones. Be there at 5 o'clock. Don't be late.
Yeah, exactly. So it's super fun to finally go back to Italy together. Obviously, we've been riding on the roads and trails of Marin County for a long time, but to finally have the stars align on this trip was fantastic.
Yeah, it was great to get out there and do that again. We also saw another World Championships together in Richmond, Virginia.
That's right.
We have a thing for the World Championships. You've seen a few. But...
And we've got a future one, I think, in our plans, right?
Oh, yeah. Montreal, 2026. Let's go.
There we go. We'll see you there. So you put the idea of this trip in my mind probably December of last year. And the trip, to be specific, because I don't think we've mentioned it, although I probably mentioned it in the intro, is the Strade Bianche professional bike race trip with Trek Travel.
Was it me that put it in your mind? I was asking you where you were going to go. I thought you convinced me, but I was down as soon as you suggested it.
It's interesting. Obviously, we're on a gravel cycling podcast, and this is sort of a hybrid trip almost, because we're road riding, but we're riding on the Strada Bianca, the white roads of Tuscany outside Siena. And for those listeners who are fans of both professional road racing and gravel cycling, I think Strada Bianchi is the race that gets us most excited, because we see the coverage, we see the professional road riders riding on gravel, and the visuals are just awesome. And they're kind of like what we experience as gravel racers and riders routinely, but so cool to see all the pro bike teams go through and participate in the event. So I was super stoked. Obviously, I'd been on a Trek Travel gravel tour in Girona a couple of years prior, so I'd had that experience with Trek. But this is the first kind of pro bike race enabled tour that I'd ever been on.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to blend those things together. I mean, you being more of a gravel rider, me being more of a road rider, but the last few trips I've taken with Trek Travel have been gravel trips, getting out there and trying new things, trying the Vermont trip, trying the Dolomites last year. This was just a really cool experience to put like my fandom of the road cycling and racing world along with this like almost instant classic. The race has only been around for 20 years and it's like become a real fan favorite.
Yeah, I was looking up some of the history of the race, and I didn't realize that it started out with Leroyka, which is an event that many people have heard about, where you ride vintage bikes on this course. And the professional bike race emerged. So the Lorica started in 1997. In 2007 is when the professional bike race emerged. So it's interesting. And obviously, being in that region and riding in that region, we saw signs of Lorica all over the place.
Right. Yeah, we even ate at the Leroica Cafe. That was incredible.
Yeah,
That was really fun.
exactly. And I came home with a Lorica sweatshirt as well. And then the cool thing, and we probably failed to mention it at this point, is there's the Gran Fondo the day after Strada Bianchi, which was awesome. So we actually get to go on 140-kilometer a ride on the similar roads as the professionals.
Yeah, it's not the full men's road course, but it's pretty close to the women's road course, and we cover all the last, climbs, that the both the men's and the women's race covered. That was really cool, especially after seeing them finish the day before and then going out and riding those roads, seeing where Pogačar crashed, and then doing that last 20K of climbs is just bananas, beautiful and hard. It was pretty
Yeah,
rewarding
yeah,
to finish
totally.
that ride.
I can't wait to get into the details a little bit more
Yeah,
of the event later.
yeah,
As I'm speaking, I misspoke because I have been to Europe once before around the Tour of Flanders and did the Tour of Flanders Gran
that's right.
Fondo, which I noted. And in speaking to the Trek travel guides, you've got a series of awesome trips that month in Flanders of a similar vein, right? You do a Paris-Roubaix and or a Flanders
Yeah,
trip.
you can choose the whole Holy Week. You could do both Flanders and Roubaix, or you can break it into chunks and do one or the other. So it's yeah, if you're a pro race fan, that's a nice companion to Strade Bianche. Is the Flanders Roubaix ultimate weekend or ultimate
Yeah.
week there.
And then one of the highlights of the year, presumably for Trek travel, is your Tour de France tours.
For sure, we take over a couple hundred people there every year. We usually do 5 or 6 trips through the Alps and the Pyrenees. It's that's a pretty exciting one too if you've never been to the tour for sure.
Yeah. Well, let's talk through the trip a little bit that we participated in, because I think it'll give people a flavor. I've talked about my experience with Trek in Girona and my general love of gravel travel, but more extensively, I love traveling by bike and having these experiences because it's just so much fun. So we start off the trip. It's a pretty quick trip relative to some others because it's in a 5-day timeline.
Right.
So we flew over. You'd already been in Europe, but I flew over to Florence and met you the night before. And day one, we basically just get picked up by our guides and head on over to Siena, which is about an hour and a half away.
Yep. And then
And
straight onto
then,
the bikes.
yeah, straight onto the bikes. And
Yeah.
the beauty of this trip and all the Trek travel trips is they've got bikes already set up for you. So you send your measurements, and if you want to ride your own saddles or pedals, you're welcome to bring those. But they'll basically get it dialed. And that first day, I think we went for maybe an hour and a half shakeout ride just to see how the
Yeah, about
bikes
30
fit.
miles. Yeah.
Yeah. And how many people were in our group?
We had 19 with us and then 3 guides.
Okay. And is
So
that pretty typical on these pro bike sort of
they tend to sell
tours?
out. They're pretty popular, and guests will go back and forth between the Strada Bianca, or I think quite a few of the guests or folks that were on our trip had done the ultimate Holy Week trip before with Flanders and Roubaix, and some
Yeah.
had done the tour as well.
Yeah, it was pretty fascinating talking to some of the men and women on our trip to learn just how many trips they had done with you guys.
Yeah, it was neat to like show up and kind of already have the camaraderie of a lot of the guests on that trip had been with Nick or Viba or Geo on previous trips, so there was already sort of a built-in fan base there.
Yeah,
It's really
and I
cool.
suppose it's the nature of this type of trip, but I felt like everybody in the crew was quite competent on the bike, and there were some people who were faster than us, some people slower than us, but everybody was,
Mostly faster.
yeah. Let's be fair.
There's some impressive riders on this trip. It was pretty great.
Yeah, yeah, and the guides were equally impressive, both across the week, just getting to know them personally, seeing their fitness, A, but B, and more importantly, their just understanding of all the sectors and the roads that we'd be riding, and their love of Strada Bianchi.
Yeah, the knowledge and passion for the race was definitely evident. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, so we got a shakeout ride on the Monday, or sorry, on the first day of the trip,
Yep.
and then the second day we went a bit longer and kind of got our first real look at some of the white roads.
Yeah, I think it was a 50. It was a nice lead up to the Fondo because it was like a 30-mile day one, a 50-mile on day two, which was pretty challenging. It was, but not like backbreaking. And then we went to the race to view the race viewing day, which was a, like a gentle 30 miles before the Fondo, which was kind of a nice way to structure the week.
Yeah, when I first looked at that mileage, I'm like, gosh, I'm going all the way to Italy. I just want to ride my ass off. But as it came down to it, between like travel fatigue, it being earlier in the year, and the punchiness of those climbs we were experiencing on day two, I was like,
Right.
that was enough in sort of those first couple of days, and I felt totally satisfied.
Yeah, you can put in if you're doing the big options every day, you get 200 miles in 4 days plus the race viewing. So it's I think it's a really well designed trip. It is compact, but it's surprising how tired you can be after doing those 4 days.
Yeah, yeah,
It's it
100%.
the elevation is pretty every day has a nice chunk of elevation gain.
Yeah, and I think for us, like we don't have a ton of rolling hills around where we
Right,
live. They tend to be more sustained,
right.
so it definitely felt different to me. I was feeling a little underprepared on that 50-mile day, thinking, "Gosh, we've got to do 90 plus in the Gran Fondo. It's going to be
Right.
a long day out there."
I'm not gonna lie, I don't think I said it during the trip, but I was a little worried after the first 2 days.
Yeah,
I was grateful for the race watching like cool down day before the Fondo. All
yeah,
worked out, but yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so we should talk through a little bit. We'll get into race day next, but basically every day after the ride, you just leave your bike and the team cleans it, takes care of it, puts it away. You've got really nothing to do but show up and eat and enjoy yourself in Siena.
Yeah. Take a nap, whatever you need. We stayed at a great hotel, the Hotel Athena, just right outside, like in Siena, but just outside the wall, so it was easy to walk like 10 minutes into town. Um, really great location. I mean, one of the best things about the Fondo day was waking up to a completely clean, like just power wash, power dried, chain lubed. It was like a brand new bike. Getting ready to ride out to the start. It was pretty great. Clean bike is a fast bike, so I
That's
appreciated
right.
that.
And chamois time's training time.
That's right. But yeah,
um,
those guys work their butts off to keep those bikes in great shape every morning when you show up.
yeah, no doubt about that. One sort of topography note: Siena is up on a hill,
Yeah,
and that was
there's no
like it
warm
was.
down.
There's no warm down, and there's no sort of in the early mornings when we were rolling out. You were
Yeah,
going downhill for 5-10 minutes, no matter what. So it was quite cool on the road out in the
yeah,
rollout in March.
for sure. We lucked out. The guides every day were saying it's not usually like this. Like it was, we had like mid 60s during the day every day, and fortunately we saw almost zero rain, which was great. Would have
Yeah,
been tough to ride those roads in the mud.
100%. And I think it just would have taken away from how much fun we had out on the course on the
Yeah,
third day, which is so we did a short ride, maybe 15-20K out to I think sector number 2
yep,
on the women's and men's road course. Got to see the women come through, which was a lot of fun. Right on one of those gravel roads. Cheer them on. We had ridden that road the day before,
yep.
and then we went to a cafe. Totally overwhelmed this local cafe with 23 people
Like
needing.
locusts. Yeah.
Yeah, I think eBay went in there and basically said, "I will buy your entire rack of baked goods." And he just walked him outside and he's like, "Get the cappuccino machine going and keep them going until we say stop."
Yeah, that was great. It was a nice break between the women's and the men's race. It was incredible to see like the riders go through, but then you just see the apparatus of like all the sort of security cars, then all the team cars, and at a certain point, like both of our videos, all you can see is dust. It's like when
Yeah.
you're on the gravel when everybody's raging by in the team cars, it's like there they go, and here comes the caravan, the follow caravan. It's pretty cool.
When the safety motorcycles come by and sort of just casually brush people a little bit further
Yeah,
to the side of the
get
road.
get get closer to the curb, will you? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, we couldn't see much of the run up of the women's race, but there was seemingly a fracture even at the point in which we started watching. I think there might have been a crash before the
yeah. It was
women
pretty
came
broken
through.
up outside of the main pack. Yeah,
Yeah. So
and the men's
it
was
was
mostly
cool.
together. Yeah,
They were going slow enough that you could kind of really see your favorite athletes cruise by, which was a lot of fun. And to your point, it is always cool seeing all the support the professional athletes get in the team cars.
Yeah, it was interesting to see the breakaway. In the men's race, you had like a 2 or 3 minute breakaway to see them go by first, and then their follow cars, and then seeing the whole peloton and like UAE on the front, clearly just ready to rip it. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. And we should mention that the night before with this trip, we had the opportunity
Right.
to meet the Lidl Trek team, and we got to go on the tour bus, as I would call it, the big bus that the riders hang out in before and after the race.
That's right.
No photos. No photos. Yeah, I was really excited to do some photos.
Yeah.
And they said no photos.
No photos.
And then we saw the the mechanics van with all the bikes
service
hanging
course,
up there.
mobile service course. That was incredible. Like,
yeah,
how many bikes, wheels, chain sets, tires. It's just like a incredible organization to get that all set up.
Yeah, and then it was cool. We got to meet the women's team and some of the men's team members. Do you remember who we got to talk to?
We talked to the whole women's team. They all kind of came out. We sort of had dinner that night with them in the hotel. So we got to talk to mostly Ina Teutenberg, the director, Retta Hansen, great domestique, and then Lizzie Danon was they were pretty engaging, pretty fun to see them all chatting up and answering questions from our group. And we got to meet. It was a little bit different with the men. They kind of came and went, but we got to meet the previous year's second place finisher, Tom Scoynes. That was really interesting to talk to him about his race. I think you talked a bit to Quinn Simmons.
Yeah.
So we got to meet like a little bit of the whole team there, which was really cool.
Yeah, it was cool, and probably not giving away any secrets. Say they had a buffet that was separate from our meal.
Yeah.
They had scales to weigh their food. They were quite a bit more disciplined than our 19-person group.
Yeah. I was surprised to see that as well. I was with my back to them, so they're weighing their food. Wow, really?
As I'm shoveling my pescatarian options in. So then going back to race day, we see the men in the same location. Then we ride ourselves back to Siena that day, and I think we were able to go back to I know we were able to go back to the hotel and then make it into the piazza for the time that the women were going to be finishing, which was awesome. We couldn't have timed it better.
Yeah, it was great to get back to the hotel, drop off the bikes, grab a quick shower, and then head over there to watch the last 20K and see him come into the finish line. It was super, super exciting.
It's just such a beautiful, scenic place to finish a bike race. We'll get into, I mentioned that it's up at the top of a hill, so we'll talk about what it's like finishing there. But just, you've got this square that's not that big, a great, beautiful clock tower. And the imagery is just stunning. When they come around the final corner, there's people up in their apartments cheering them on from around the corner. And then you see a rider emerge or a sprint emerge to a slight downhill to the finish line. It's just an incredible scene.
Yeah, it's pretty iconic. Like, if you think about that finish line you could compare it to the finish in Roubaix on the Velodrome or the finish on the Champs-Élysées in France. It's a super, super different way to finish a bike race up that steep, the Santa Caterina steep climb into the Campo is just really unique.
And we were able to get, super close to the women's finish.
Yeah, that was sort of shocking how few people were there. It's sort of a bummer. We were there for the women's race. We're just going to say that now. So we were excited to be so close and to see the podium ceremony afterwards. But you got some great shots of Demi Vollering winning. And then we were standing right where they all finish, and they're all kind of bottlenecked into this little corner, and their whole team is surrounding them, and people are congratulating them, and they all just look destroyed. And you're just like, wow, how can you get this close to such amazing athletes? But it was really, really cool.
Yeah, super cool. And then we watched the celebration as they got their trophy and sprayed the champagne. We were almost close enough to get hit with champagne, I feel like.
That was cool.
And then the Trek team had secured a lunch spot right on the piazza in one of the restaurants with the massive flat screen TV. So we were able to roll over there, join the lunch that was already in progress, and watch the men's race on TV for a few hours.
Yeah, that was like a really cool setup to see the women's finish, go stuff our faces, and keep track of the race while we did it, and then be able to run right back outside to see the men finish in the same way. I mean, it was pretty remarkable. I think we were like getting kind of itchy with about 15-20K to go. We're like, you ready? Let's get out there. go
Yeah,
go
yeah.
stake out our spot along the finish line.
It was awesome. Being a North American, we don't always get to watch these events live as they're unfolding. So to
Right.
sort of feel the energy and watch on the TV, obviously that the Tom Pitcock Pogacar breakaway was happening, and we were all, I think all eyes were on the television at the point where they've got this great shot of Tade ripping around this corner and just hitting the deck. And I didn't think he was going to get up. I don't know about you. It looked, and the first time I saw it, it looked like he really wailed his head and he rolled far into the
Just
grass.
got catapulted into the grass. Yeah.
Yeah, I was absolutely shocked he was able to get up. And then it was nice to see Tom Pitcock do the gentlemanly thing. And, he
Yeah.
kind of shook his head after the crash, but, clearly just soft pedaled until Tade came back to him.
It's incredible when you're either in the restaurant or like on the square with the jumbotrons and something like that happens and you hear the whole crowd gasp, like that like collective gasp of a few thousand people right next to you is like pretty like, wow, that just happened. That was
Exactly.
a shocking mid-race event for sure.
Yeah, totally. And then once it was back on, like you said, I think with 15K Tade attacked maybe with 18K to go, and by 15 or 10K, we were like, we got to get out there and get on the streets and get right by the finish line again to see this.
Yeah, it was incredible to see him come over the line first, all battered and bloodied, and was so full of adrenaline. He didn't say much until he got into the interviewing room. It was like right before he was going to go get his trophy. It kind of hurts now. It's like he had so much adrenaline to attack and finish the race, but as soon as the race is done, he's like, "Oh, I'm really scratched up."
Yeah, he was totally tore up. And then the other interesting thing for me at the finish line was that, not a lot of people actually finish the race, which is, I mean,
Right.
as a professional, I get it. Like you do your job, and then you and I will talk about how hard it is to get to the finish, and
Yeah.
why if you weren't required to get there, maybe you don't get there. So I think maybe only like 20-25 riders finish. Does that feel right to you?
That sounds about right. Once you're out of contention, there's not a whole lot of reason to struggle through. It was incredible to stand there and watch the finishes that did come through, that just covered in dust, sometimes dust and blood, and just looking shattered. And
Yeah.
was a little scary thinking about what we were going to do the next
Yeah,
morning.
it
I was like,
didn't
oh
help the
boy,
nerves.
no. Real quick
Yeah, it's
shout out to Tade. I thought it was so classy when he was being interviewed after the finish. They're like, "Hey, you're the first world champion to win Strada Bianche," and he's like, "No, Lada Kopecky won last year. She was the world
yeah,
champion." I love that. It was so great.
love it.
It's just like
So
such a
cool.
classy guy and sort of respect for the sport and his fellow athletes. Pretty cool.
Yeah, 100%. Well, giddy with our race
Yeah.
day experience, we then kind of went off to dinner and back to the hotel and needed to get our heads around what 140 kilometers on that course was going to look like for us in the Gran Fondo with 7,000 of our closest friends.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little nervous about that start. Just not about the well, okay, maybe a little bit about the distance and the elevation, but just yeah. Do you want to talk about what that was like
Yeah,
to have
yeah, yeah.
a starting bell go off and 7,000 people take off? I know you've done like SBT and Unbound, so it's probably not that different, but the scale was pretty large.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, the guides did a really good job of previewing us some of the terrain we were going to be on.
Yeah, it's helpful.
They gave us a lot of confidence that the Trek van was going to be there. So we, we had multiple drop bag locations. We knew they were going to be there for us, that we didn't have to go to the mass, rest stop areas, which was a super luxury. So we're on the Trek Checkpoint SLR bikes with 45C gravel tires on them. So, pretty robust bicycle for this kind of event when you compare to what a lot of people were riding. I think the professionals were still on 28s or 30s and full slicks. So interesting from an equipment perspective, and that'll come up, I think, in the conversation. But we get up at 6 a.m. We go down to breakfast. You and I are roommates. We go down to breakfast at like 6:01, and every single table is occupied. We're sort of fighting for space. This is
Everybody's
clearly
fueling
like
up.
everybody's fueling up. There's, dozens and dozens and dozens of people in the hotel who are going to go on the same journey we are. I think our rollout time from the hotel was 7 a.m. Does that sound right?
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had to go down a hill. This detail wasn't clear in my mind morning of, but we had to ride somewhere to start the event. And of course, being in Siena, we had to ride downhill
And then right back up.
and then we rode back up to another part of town.
Yeah.
And there were multiple different staging areas based on a color on your number plate. So we kind of fumbled around. Maybe there was five different colors out there. I think we were in the green sector, and there had to have been 1,500 people in our sector alone.
Yeah, I think it was based on distance you were doing and maybe the speed you were going to ride. I'm not sure.
Yeah. There could be something like if you're demonstrably a fast person, you're going to go in a different color than us. But our, Wiebe in particular had mentioned like it's crazy town to begin with in this event. And I think in addition to 7,000 people being around you, we started with a massive downhill.
Yeah, there were a lot of people going really fast. It was good advice. He was saying, kind of keep your space and kind of stay to the right because people are going to want to pass on the left. And they were certainly doing that. So I think we stayed together or within close proximity just to, for the first, like you said, the first hour or so to navigate some of that. But once we hit that first section of dirt, I saw the robot eyes go on and you were gone. You're like, dirt.
My comfort zone. I wasn't so comfortable with all these people flying around me. I remember at one point you and I were sort of casually riding maybe like 3 feet apart.
Yeah.
And someone just splits the middle. And I was like, okay, I guess we got to ride closer if we're going to discourage these people from dive bombing. And they were dive bombing left, right, and center, no matter what we did.
Yeah, there was a lot of passing on the right, passing in weird places, and a lot of people just sinistra, passing on the left. I'm on your left. I'm going hard. It was like, stay out of the way.
My problem is I never internalized which one was right or left, so I would just kind of keep in a straight line whenever possible.
Hold still. Yeah.
So I think blissfully in terms of the amount of mileage we needed to cover, it was nice that there was, I don't know, call it 20K of riding on pavement to break things up a little bit before we hit the first dirt section. First dirt section was 2.1 kilometers long. Still pretty packed in terms of people being around. Yeah. But definitely I felt more personally in my comfort zone at that point. I knew that from an equipment perspective with the 45C tires, I had a lot more control than a lot of the my Italian compatriots who were riding 25s and 28s on their full aero road bikes.
There were a lot of flat tires in that first couple hours.
Yeah, no doubt. There was some parallels with the Unbound experience where it's just crazy and flat tires are happening all the time.
That was the nice thing about the checkpoint. Like the tires are, a little bit bigger, but no one on the ride got a flat, and it's just really comfortable. Like in a ride like that, where it can be pretty challenging both from a elevation perspective, but also just a terrain perspective, just getting bounced around a bit. I felt pretty good at the end, surprisingly. Much better than I thought.
I think for people who haven't done a ton of gravel riding, it was a confidence inspiring choice to set them up that way, because you could go in as someone who's ridden on the road a ton and ride that gravel and not feel like the bike was all over the place. Yeah, totally sketchy.
Just feels totally stable under you. Yeah.
I witnessed some sketchy stuff out there with people and nothing to do with their bike's handling talent. It was just equipment choice. They literally could not stay on their line because of their tires being so much smaller. And
rim brakes on some of those things. The descents, I mean, we talk about the climbs, but even some of the descents were, somewhat challenging to navigate, especially with a group. It really kind of opened up once you made the turn to the longer part of the event, the full fondo, and then it kind of really opened up for us, where there was riders, but not nearly as many.
Yeah, 100%.
That was a nice
shift. It's a good point on the descending. It definitely was. You could definitely see the people who had either just confidence, warranted or unwarranted, or the right bike for the situation.
Yeah.
Because I was, there were definitely stutter bumps from all the riders out there. So you definitely got into situations where you were getting a lot of feedback from the trail.
Yeah, it's amazing to have ridden some of those roads in the first couple of days. I think they actually go through and they grade it before the race. Like they try to kind of smooth it out a little bit, but after,
Yeah.
2 races go through with all the cars and all the riders, the conditions have changed in one day pretty significantly. It was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. In total, there's 10 different gravel sectors in this event over the 140 kilometers. I think there's 50 kilometers of gravel riding. So it's a nice mix of.
Felt like more in a good way.
Yeah. For me, I was just like, I was way more comfortable on the ground. Not way more comfortable, but I was having way more fun. And
Yeah.
I think you alluded
I
to, like,
loved it. Yeah.
after the first two gravel sections, I would just hit one and be like, okay, it's on. And
Turbo.
I was just having a blast. And
Yeah.
some of these climbs, I mean, they were 15, 18% grade, both up
Yeah.
and down.
And a lot of them were in the last 20K.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. I remember one sector, I was just kind of talking to myself and having fun because everybody speaks Italian and I didn't. So I remember at one point, a rider just closed the door on the left-hand side to another rider. And I sort of jokingly said, but fairly loud, I guess that door is closed. And it turned out the guy was from the UK and he was just dying laughing because I think he was having the same experience with me. Like nothing I said really landed with anybody. So it's hard to you just sort of make noise to make yourself aware and obviously ride as safely as possible.
Yeah. It was a super like challenging experience, but it was like, I don't know if you felt the same. It's super rewarding, especially like getting through that last 20K and hitting, the Tolfe climb, getting up to Santa Caterina. Like those are steep climbs. I don't know if you
Yeah.
want to
And
talk about that experience that you had coming up a couple of those.
yeah, for sure. I mean, those were later in the day and we're talking 10-kilometer long sectors at this point, which was cool because the earlier ones were shorter, as I mentioned, like 4K, 5K. So to get on the longer ones, and then you were just looking at these beautiful gravel roads going through the Tuscan hillsides. Yeah, it was super cool. And we sort of hadn't mentioned in the previous days, we'd seen castles and old brick towns. And like, we definitely had this, it was
a beautiful place to ride.
Yeah. Being
even when you're suffering, at least you got something to look at. That's pretty.
Exactly. And I didn't know enough about the route. Like I didn't agonize over it. Like, I might have done Unbound to try to figure out like, how am I going to survive this thing? It was kind of more by the seat of our pants. And that one long climb up to, I think it's the Toffe Pass where we met Gio in the van. Like that was more than I had expected because it was like just felt like a long gravel grind. It was interesting just experiencing that and seeing the fans on the side of the road encouraging you, and then you kind of crest out on the ridge line back onto the pavement.
Yeah.
And the van's there and you're just like, oh, great.
Thank goodness. Just where you're supposed to be.
And you could look back watching everybody coming up the hill. And it was so funny. So you hadn't arrived yet. We had gotten separated for a bit. And an Irish rider comes up with two friends. And he's like, hey, do you guys have any tape?
Oh, I remember this. Yeah.
Maybe you were there. Gio's like, well, what do you need tape for? And he's like, my look pedal, the entire back end of the pedal has fallen off. So basically he's got zero purchase.
Yeah.
And he's like, my friends are tired of pushing me up these hills. Do you have any tape? And Gio's like, don't be ridiculous. Like, tape's not going to do anything. How about this? How about we give you a set of pedals, a set of cleats. You just return them back in Siena. We're all going to the same place.
Yeah, that was really cool.
That was such a nice gesture.
The guy sat there, put his cleats on, and then ended up finishing the race. That was cool. Or the ride. Yeah.
That's super cool. And then Gio also mentioned that Quinn Sibbons, the professional rider from Lidl Trek, he had flatted out of the race the day before. And it turns out he showed up at the Trek van because he was riding the Gran Fondo with his mom and dad. And
that was
he
cool.
had yet another flat, and Gio gave him a tube to kick him down the road.
Mobile bike shop.
Yeah.
Gotta love it.
And that once we got on that ridgeline, it was awesome because we did have a substantial amount of road riding ahead of us for a while, which
Yeah.
I'm sure I could speak for both of us. It was a bit of a relief to just be able to cruise. It was a lot of downhilling at that point.
Yeah.
We got into some good groups, and we were just kind of motoring and putting some kilometers under our belt.
And you can start to see the city, so you got your sight line for your finish. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty cool.
And then I think we were in good spirits. We rolled up with a couple of our trip mates along the way, which was fun to kind of ride with those guys.
The
Roll
two
up onto
P's, Patrick and
the
Perry.
two. Exactly. Good guys, very
Great riders.
strong.
Yeah.
Yeah. We roll up to that van and they're like, great, great, you guys are here. Let's get you situated. What do you need? Let's get you some more food, etc. And then it kind of dawned on, I think, both of us that we knew how much elevation we were needing to have done. I think was it 7,000 feet over the course of the day?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we hadn't yet hit 5,000 feet of climbing.
And there wasn't much longer to go.
Yeah, I'm like, there's a big disconnect here. I got a big problem because it seems like we don't have a lot of mileage and we've got a lot of vertical feet to cover. So that was a little bit of a heady moment, but it was nice to like have sort of had a reset, get some food, get a little more warm clothes on if we needed it, and then head off on those last sectors.
It's like, yeah, that's why like I knew I could make it. I knew it was going to be hard, but I was like, okay, I'm just going to kind of strap in. Let's go.
Yeah. We had that. I think both of us misunderstood. We had asked about this steep climb we had ridden 2 days before and how far up it was. And I think they were they were thinking about the dirt sector, and we were talking about this vicious road climb that we did.
And it was right after the rest stop.
Yeah, it was right after the rest stop.
Like, oh, there it is. It's right here.
And this was like the type of climb, even fresh, you sort of think about doing the paperboy weave back and forth on the course.
When you can see it from a half mile away, you're like, oh no, is that where we're going?
Yeah. And then a couple more tough gravel climbs after that point.
Yeah.
Then we got into
really beautiful though.
It was. Yeah. It was funny. I mean, that very much felt like, to me, like the end of a big gravel event where
somewhere like almost single tracky, like when you get up to the ridge there was kind of cool. Switchback, little single track, kind of fun.
Super cool. I got some good pictures of you and Perry coming up there.
Yeah.
And then we get into some small towns and it starts feeling like we're getting close to Siena because we'd ridden back into Siena a few times, cruising, riding with Patrick and a few other guys. And then we hit the climb into Siena. And holy God, I mean, this thing is, I don't know, maybe 16, 17% at the end. You kind of climb up the pavement just to soften your legs up a little bit. You go through one of the gates of Siena, from the wall of Siena, and then you get these big cobbles, and you're riding up this chute that you just see probably a quarter mile up ahead of you. And there's fans on the side of the road. There's riders struggling to get up. And it's just this epic scene that you have seen now from watching the pro bike race. You'd seen the riders go up it. And I just remember feeling like just very part of the cycling community and cycling world in Siena at that moment.
Yeah, it was fun. There were a lot of friends and family for tons of those riders out there. So they were still cheering people on late in the day. So it kind of felt like you were like wrapping up your own personal Strada Bianchi race. A lot of people shouting at you to keep pushing. It was really fun to kind of come into the city like that.
I had a little bit of a break in my story because I kind of crested that climb, and then we came to an intersection and there was riders going both ways, and I took a left, and then I'm riding. I'm like, this doesn't feel right. And I asked some riders, I'm like, is this the way to the finish? And it was English as a second language. They're like, no, this is the pasta party.
I didn't hear that story.
Jesus. Jesus. I went the wrong way. So I turned around and then rolled around the corner, and then you roll into the piazza.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
You got the big clock tower. You go across the same finish line as the pros that we watched before. Just super cool conclusion to an amazing day out there.
And you got your medal, your finisher medal.
You got my medal. Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Pretty
The
cool.
10 years of the Gran Fondo.
Yeah, that was a pretty nicely designed medal. I didn't realize it was the 10th anniversary. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. And then I think everybody on the team finished.
Yeah.
On our crew, we had some doing the medium length one, some doing the long one, which we did. I think everybody at minimum has some great stories to tell their friends when they went home.
Yeah, it was a big day, but it was definitely worth it. I think
Yeah,
everybody, I think no one really said anything the night before, but I think a few people were a little bit nervous about it, but everybody was like super just stoked to arrive in the Campo after the ride and just be like, that was amazing, especially
yeah,
after watching the race the day before.
100%. Yeah, in hindsight, like it was a week that was packed with packed with things to do. There was a nice progression of the mileage. We didn't overcook my grits prior to the event, so I gave myself the best chance of having a good day out there.
Yeah,
It was hard and intimidating, which I loved,
right.
but totally doable and certainly well supported along the way, whether it was from the Gran Fondo organizers or Trek's additional support level. Like it just felt like a great accomplishment and felt couldn't be more satisfied with my trip to Italy.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear it. It was great to have you there. It was 30 years in the making, so
Yeah,
wouldn't have been nearly as fun without you there. So
exactly. Well, it was fun reminiscing a bit, as I'm
yeah,
sure we'll continue to do over the years. It's such a monumental trip we had. And thanks for coming on. Thanks for
thanks for
everything you
having me.
guys do at Trek Travel for sure. I think you're the third Trek Travel person we've had over here. I've appreciated as I've advocated to the audience, like Trek's put a lot of energy into gravel tourism and gravel travel. And it's a great way to go see some of these communities you've read about, and particularly in for me, the European trips, just to experience the culture and have the guides with local knowledge has always been this like additional bit of je ne sais quoi about what that European experience is like.
Yeah, there's a lot of great gravel over there.
Yeah,
Check us out
no
at
doubt.
trektravel.com.
A good
Lots of stuff,
pitch.
lots of good trips in the States and in Europe. So
Yeah, exactly. And if you're interested in Strada Bianca, it is a trip that sells out. It's obviously in March every year.
yeah,
I think you can already sort of reserve a spot on Trek Travel's website at
we're
this
getting
point.
close. Yeah, you can sort of put yourself on a wait list.
Yeah, and there's still, I don't know if there's still room in the Holy Week trips to
Sold
Flanders
out.
and Roubaix. Okay,
Yeah, that one goes fast. Like we're pretty close to sold out for that one. You got to get in early, and same with the tour. It's pretty well booked. Even the Tour de France, the women's Tour de France, is nearly sold out for this year, which is really exciting.
amazing. And I can't wait for you to have some uh, gravel race trips in the future as well. I think it would be a fun way of doing some of these events. People who aren't necessarily racing, but want to go to somewhere like SBT or to
Yeah,
Unbound, or I know you already have a trip to Bentonville, but
yep.
it is kind of an interesting idea. I think you guys should play around with is
Connect the
like,
two. Yeah,
yeah, what would it be like to bring a group of people who just want to experience that area in a deeper way and have a little bit of extra support in some of these milestone gravel events.
yeah, for sure. I think Unbound would be an interesting one for sure.
Yeah, cool. All right,
Well, yeah,
well, I will let you go.
yeah. Thanks for
Hopefully I
having me
even
again.
see you this weekend and we can do some riding and reminisce some more.
Yeah, see you up in Marin.
Sounds good.
Take care, Craig. Good to see you.
That's going to do it for this week's edition of the Gravel Ride Podcast. Big thanks to Rich for coming on the show, and a big thanks to Trek Travel for all the great gravel cycling experiences they offer around the world. Top notch organization that's dedicating a lot of time and energy into the gravel world. So if you're a fan of professional bike racing and you want to have an experience like I did at Strada Bianca, go check them out at trektravel.com. Obviously, they've got the other spring classics and the Tour de France, both men and women, as options for you, but also a bunch of fantastic gravel trips to Bentonville, to Switzerland, to Vermont, to Girona, all over the world. So again, go hit them up at trektravel.com and let them know that the Gravel Ride podcast sent you. Until next time, here's to finding some dirt under your wheels.